The church smelled of polished wood and lilies, but all I could feel was the weight of my own heartbeat. My brother, Ethan, stood at the altar, his suit crisp, his smile practiced, and I thought I'd lost him forever. Then his eyes met mine across the aisle, and in that single, shattering moment, everything I thought I knew about love unraveled. I'm Lucas, 24, the younger of the two of us, always trailing in Ethan's shadow. Growing up in small-town Georgia, we were the Carter boys. Ethan, the golden son, charming and steady, and me, the quiet one, sketching dreams in notebooks while the world expected me to be someone I wasn't. Ethan, 28, was the one who'd always known his place, star quarterback, prom king, the guy who'd marry his high school sweetheart, Claire, and settle into the life our town had scripted for him. Claire, with her soft curls and kind eyes, was perfect. Everyone said so. The wedding was today, and I was supposed to be happy for him. Supposed to. But last night, under the flickering porch light of our childhood home, Ethan had pulled me aside. His hands shook as he lit a cigarette, something he hadn't done since we were teens sneaking behind the barn. "Lucas," he'd said, his voice low, "I need to tell you something. Something I should have said years ago." I thought he was nervous about the wedding, maybe cold feet. I wasn't ready for what came next. "Luke, I'm not in love with Claire." His words hit like a punch. I've been lying to everyone. To her, to mom and dad, to myself. But I can't lie to you anymore. His eyes, those warm brown eyes I'd known my whole life, were pleading. "You're the one I've always loved." I stood there, frozen, the cicadas screaming in the Georgia night. My brother, my best friend, the person I'd spent my life idolizing, was confessing something that broke every rule we'd been raised to follow. And worse, it stirred something in me I'd buried so deep I barely recognized it. I loved him too. Not just as a brother, but in a way that made my chest ache. In a way that was forbidden, impossible, dangerous. The church buzzed with anticipation now, guests fanning themselves with programs, whispering about how perfect Ethan and Claire looked together. I sat in the second row, my sketchbook tucked under my jacket, my hands trembling. Ethan's confession had turned my world upside down, and I didn't know if I could face him at the altar without breaking. How do you stand by and watch the person you love marry someone else, knowing they love you back? How do you carry a secret that could tear your family apart? I'd always known I was different. Growing up, I'd felt it in the way I shied away from the girls who flirted with me at school, in the way my heart raced when Ethan ruffled my hair or pulled me into a hug. I'd chalked it up to admiration, to wanting to be like him. But last night, when he said those words, it was like a dam broke inside me. I'd loved him all along, and I hated myself for it. This wasn't just about us being brothers, it was about a small town that wouldn't understand, a family that would never forgive, and a love that felt like a betrayal of everything we were. Claire walked down the aisle, radiant in white, her smile soft but nervous. I couldn't look at her without guilt clawing at me. She didn't know. She didn't know that Ethan had spent the night pacing our old treehouse, telling me he'd only proposed because it was what everyone expected. "I thought I could do it," he'd said, his voice breaking. "I thought I could be normal. But every time I look at you, Luke, I know I can't." Now, as the pastor began the ceremony, Ethan's eyes kept darting to me. Each glance was a knife, twisting deeper. I wanted to run, to scream, to pull him away from this lie. But I stayed rooted, my sketchbook digging into my side, the pages filled with drawings of him, his smile, his hands, the way he looked when he thought no one was watching. I'd never shown them to anyone. They were my secret, just like this love was his. The pastor's voice droned on, but I barely heard it. My mind was stuck on last night, on the way Ethan's voice cracked when he said, "I don't know how to fix this, Luke." I don't know how to be without you. I wanted to tell him we could run away. Start over somewhere no one knew us. But where? This was Georgia. This was our home, our family, our prison. As Claire reached the altar, Ethan's hand twitched, like he was fighting the urge to turn to me. I gripped the pew, my knuckles white. I didn't know what he'd do when the pastor asked for his vows. I didn't know what I'd do if he said them. All I knew was that this moment, this church, this secretit was going to change us forever. The organ swelled, and the pastor's voice cut through the haze in my mind. If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating, and I felt every pair of eyes in the church burning into me, even though they couldn't know. Could they? Ethan's gaze locked on mine, and for a heartbeat, I thought he'd say it right there, in front of everyone. I thought he'd unravel the lie and choose me. But he turned back to Claire, his jaw tight, and my stomach dropped. I was losing him all over again. I slipped out of the pew, muttering an excuse about needing air, and stumbled into the church courtyard. The Georgia sun was relentless, baking the gravel under my feet, but it couldn't burn away the ache in my chest. I leaned against an oak tree, its shade offering no relief, and pulled out my sketchbook. My pencil moved on instinct, tracing Ethan's face, the curve of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. I'd drawn him 1,000 times, but today, every stroke felt like a goodbye. Back inside, I heard the faint murmur of vows. Claire's voice was steady, full of love. Ethan's was quieter, strained. I couldn't go back in there. I couldn't watch him promise himself to someone else. Not after what he'd told me. Not after I'd admitted, in the quiet of that treehouse, that I felt the same. Last night, after his confession, we'd sat in that creaky old treehouse until dawn. It was our place, built by our dad when we were kids, a refuge from the world. Ethan had leaned against the wooden wall, his knees pulled up, and said, "I've known since I was 16. Luke, the way I felt about you, it wasn't just brotherly. It scared the hell out of me." I'd sat there, stunned, my own feelings spilling out before I could stop them. I thought it was just me. I'd whispered. I thought I was broken. He'd reached for my hand, his fingers warm and calloused, and for a moment, it felt like we could rewrite the rules. But then he'd pulled back, his face crumpling. "We can't do this," he'd said. "Not here. Not with Mom and Dad. Not with Claire. Not with this town." I wanted to argue, to tell him we could find a way, but the fear in his eyes stopped me. He was right. This love was a grenade, and we were both holding the pin. Now, in the courtyard, I heard footsteps crunching behind me. I shoved the sketchbook into my jacket, but it was too late. "Luke." It was Mom, her voice soft but sharp with worry. She was 52, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes too perceptive. "What's wrong? Honey, you look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile, my throat tight. "Just needed some air. It's overwhelming in there." She studied me, her brow furrowing, and I wondered if she could see the truth written in my shaking hands, my red-rimmed eyes. She'd always been good at reading us, but this was one secret I prayed she'd never uncover. "You and Ethan," she said, her voice gentle but probing. "You've been off lately. Like you're keeping something from me." My heart stopped. I wanted to tell her everything, to let the weight of it spill out, but I couldn't. Not when it would break her, break our family, break everything. "I'm fine, Mom." I lied, my voice barely steady. "Just nervous for him. You know. Big day." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded, squeezing my arm before heading back inside. I stayed there, staring at the church doors, knowing I had to go back in, knowing I had to face him. When I slipped back into the pew, The ceremony was nearly over. Ethan was holding Claire's hands, his face a mask of calm I knew he didn't feel. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. She was kind, smart, everything he deserved in a world that didn't include me. But every time he glanced my way, I saw the truth. He was trapped, just like I was. The pastor pronounced them husband and wife, and the church erupted in applause. Ethan kissed Claire, but his eyes found mine over her shoulder, and they were full of apologies. I felt like I was drowning. I clapped along with everyone else, my hands mechanical, my heart splintering. This was it. He'd made his choice. But as they walked down the aisle, Ethan slowed, his hand brushing mine as he passed. It was deliberate, a secret in plain sight, and it sent a jolt through me. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear, and whispered, "Meet me tonight. The treehouse. Please." I nodded, barely, my pulse racing. The reception was a blur of laughter, toasts, Claire's radiant smile. I played my part, the proud younger brother, but my mind was on tonight. On what he'd say, on whether we'd dare to cross the line we'd been towing for years. As the sun set, painting the Georgia sky in hues of orange and pink, I slipped away from the reception, my heart pounding. The treehouse was waiting, and so was Ethan. I didn't know what would happen, but I knew one thing: whatever came next, we'd face it together. The treehouse smelled of old wood and memories, a time capsule of our childhood. I climbed the rickety ladder, my hands slick with sweat, and found Ethan already there, sitting cross-legged on the floor, a bottle of whiskey between his knees. His tie was gone, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, and his eyes God. His eyes were storms of guilt and longing. "You came," he said, his voice rough, like he hadn't expected me to show. I wanted to laugh, to tell him I'd always come when he called, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I sat across from him, the space between us charged with everything we hadn't said. I couldn't stay away, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Not after everything." He nodded, passing me the bottle. I took a swig, the burn grounding me, reminding me this was real. We were here, teetering on the edge of something we couldn't take back. "I married her, Luke," he said, his words heavy with regret. "I stood there and promised her forever, knowing it was a lie, knowing I was thinking of you." His voice broke, and he looked away, his hands clenched into fists. I'm a coward. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him he wasn't, but I didn't know if I believed it. He'd chosen the safe path, the one that kept our family intact, our town's approval secure. But it was killing him, and it was killing me too. "Why didn't you stop it?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. "You could have walked away. You could have chosen." I trailed off, unable to say me. He looked at me then, his eyes raw. I wanted to. "God, Luke, you have no idea how much I wanted to grab your hand and run. But Mom, Dad, Claire, everyone was watching. I couldn't do that to them. To her." He rubbed his face, his wedding band glinting in the moonlight filtering through the treehouse slats. "But I can't do this either. I can't live without you." His words hit like a tidal wave, pulling me under. I'd spent years hiding my feelings, convincing myself they were wrong, that I could move on. But here he was, saying the one thing I dreamed of and dreaded. I leaned closer, my heart hammering. "What are we supposed to do, Ethan? We're brothers. This town, our familia'll destroy us." He reached for my hand, his touch electric, and I didn't pull away. "I don't care about them anymore," he said, his voice fierce. "I care about you. I've always cared about you." His thumb brushed over my knuckles, and I felt the world shift. This was real. This was us. We talked for hours, the whiskey loosening our tongues, the treehouse shielding us from the world. He told me about the years he'd tried to be someone else, dating girls, proposing to Claire, all to drown out his feelings for me. I told him about my sketches, the ones I'd hidden, the ones that were all him. We laughed, we cried, and for the first time, we were honest. But dawn was coming, and with it, reality. Ethan was married now. Claire was waiting for him, expecting a honeymoon, a life. What happens tomorrow? I asked, my voice small. He didn't answer right away, just pulled me into his arms, his chin resting on my head. It was the first time he'd held me like that, not as a brother, but as something more. We'll figure it out, he murmured. Together. But even as he said it, I felt the weight of the world pressing in newer parents. Claire, the town that would never understand. I wanted to believe him, but fear gnawed at me. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was Georgia, and we were playing with fire. When we finally climbed down, the sky was pink, and the world felt different. Ethan squeezed my hand one last time before heading back to the house he now shared with Claire. I watched him go, my heart torn between hope and dread. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew I'd never let him go. Not now. Not ever. The next week was a tightrope. Ethan and Claire were supposed to be on their honeymoon, but Ethan had convinced her to delay it, citing work. In truth, he was sneaking out to meet Mel late nights in the treehouse, stolen moments in my tiny apartment above the hardware store. Each touch, each whispered word, felt like a rebellion against the world. But secrets don't stay buried in a town like ours. People started talking about Ethan's distracted smiles, about me skipping Sunday dinners, about the way we looked at each other a little too long. Mom cornered me one afternoon at the diner, her coffee untouched. "Lucas, what's going on with you and Ethan?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You're acting like strangers." I choked on my lie, muttering something about stress. But her eyes narrowed, and I knew she wasn't buying it. She'd always known when we were hiding something, ever since we were kids stealing cookies from the jar. This was bigger, though, and the guilt was eating me alive. Ethan was struggling too. Claire noticed his distance, his late nights at the office. One night, he showed up at my apartment, his eyes red. "She asked me if I'm cheating," he said, pacing the cramped living room. I didn't know what to say. "Luke, I can't keep lying to her." "Then tell her," I said, my voice shaking. "Tell her the truth." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't that simple. Telling Claire meant telling everyone, our parents, our friends, the whole damn town. It meant destroying the life Ethan had built, the one I'd never fit into. He sank onto my couch, his head in his hands. "I want to be with you," he said. "But I don't know how to do this without hurting her. She doesn't deserve this." I sat beside him, my hand on his back, feeling the tension in his shoulders. I wanted to fix it, to make it easy, but there was no easy here. The next day, Claire showed up at my apartment. Her eyes were puffy, her voice steady but fragile. "Lucas, I need to know what's going on," she said. "Ethan's not himself, and you're part of it, aren't you?" My heart pounded, but I couldn't lie to her face. Not when she looked so broken. "Claire, I started, but the words died. How do you tell someone their husband loves his brother? How do you explain a love that's both everything and impossible?" She stared at me, waiting, and I felt the weight of every choice we'd made. "I think you should talk to Ethan," I said finally, my voice hollow. She nodded, tears spilling over, and left without another word. I sank to the floor, my sketchbook falling open to a drawing of Ethan laughing, his eyes bright. I wanted that Ethan back, the one who wasn't drowning in guilt. That night, Ethan called me, his voice frantic. Claire knows something's wrong. She's asking questions I can't answer. We met at the treehouse again, our sanctuary, but it felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in. We have to decide, he said, his hands gripping mine. Do we tell her? Do we run? Or do we stop? The word stop was a knife. I pulled my hands away, my chest tight. You think we can just stop feeling this? I asked, my voice breaking. Ethan, I've loved you my whole life. I don't know how to stop. He reached for me, his touch desperate. I don't want to stop, he said. But I don't know how to live like this either. We stood there, caught between love and fear, knowing that whatever we chose would change everything. The truth came out on a Tuesday, like a storm that had been brewing too long. Claire confronted Ethan at their house, her voice carrying through the open window as I waited outside, my heart in my throat. Tell me the truth, Ethan, she demanded. Who is it? Who are you in love with? I didn't hear his answer, but I saw her face when she stormed out pale, shattered, her eyes meeting mine for a split second before she got in her car and drove away. Ethan followed, his face ashen, and when he saw me, he froze. She knows, he said, his voice barely audible. Not everything, but enough. We didn't go to the treehouse that night. Instead, we drove to the edge of town, to a field where we used to stargaze as kids. The sky was clear, the stars indifferent to the mess we'd made. Ethan told me what happened. He'd admitted he didn't love her, that he'd never loved her the way she deserved. He hadn't said my name, but Claire wasn't stupid. She'd seen the way he looked at me. She's leaving, he said, his voice hollow. She's going to her parents' place in Savannah. She said she needs time. I wanted to feel relief, but all I felt was guilt. Claire was collateral damage in a war we hadn't meant to start. What now? I asked, lying back in the grass, the cool earth grounding me. Ethan lay beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. I don't know, he admitted. But I can't lose you, Luke. Not again. We stayed there until the sky lightened, talking about everything and nothing, our childhood, our dreams, the life we might have if we were brave enough. For the first time, I let myself imagine it, a place where we could be together, not as brothers, but as partners. A place where no one knew our names. But reality crashed in with the sunrise. Mom called, her voice tight with worry. Claire's gone. Lucas. Ethan's not answering his phone. What's happening? I mumbled something about giving him space, but I knew the clock was ticking. The town was already whispering, and soon, they'd know the truth. We went back to my apartment, Ethan's hand in mine as we walked up the stairs. Inside, he kissed me soft at first, then desperate, like he was afraid I'd disappear. It was our first kiss, and it felt like coming home and falling apart all at once. I love you, he whispered against my lips, and I said it back, my voice shaking. But love wasn't enough. Not yet. We had to face our parents, our town, the fallout of a truth that would break everything. Ethan wanted to tell them together, to stand united, but I was terrified. What if they hated us? What if they turned us away? That afternoon, we drove to our parents' house, the weight of our decision pressing down on us. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen, their faces lined with worry. What's going on? Dad asked, his voice gruff. Claire called. She's talking about annulment. Ethan took a deep breath, his hand finding mine under the table. There's something we need to tell you, he said, and I felt the world hold its breath. The kitchen was silent, the kind of silence that swallows you whole. Ethan's hand was clammy in mine, but he didn't let go. Mom's eyes darted between us, her coffee mug trembling in her hands. Dad just stared, his jaw tight, like he was bracing for a blow. "I'm in love with Lucas," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fear I knew he felt. "I always have been. I married Claire because I thought I could be someone I'm not. But I can't. I love him, and I'm sorry for the pain it's caused." The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad's face darkened, his chair scraping as he stood. "What are you saying, Ethan?" he demanded. "This is your brother. This is wrong." I flinched, but Ethan squeezed my hand, grounding me. "It's not wrong," he said, his voice fierce. "It's who I am. Who we are. I know it's hard to understand, but we're not asking for permission. We're telling you because you're our family." Mom started crying, soft sobs that cut deeper than Dad's anger. "How could you do this?" she whispered. "To Claire. To us. To God." I wanted to reach for her, to explain, but there were no words to make this easier. We'd known this would hurt them, but knowing didn't soften the blow. Dad stormed out, the screen door slamming behind him. Mom stayed, her eyes searching ours, like she was looking for the boy she'd raised. "I need time," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I can't. I don't know how to process this." She left too, her footsteps fading up the stairs. We sat there, alone in the kitchen where we'd eaten countless meals. Laughed, fought, lived. Ethan's thumb brushed over my knuckles. A silent promise. "They'll come around," he said, but I heard the doubt in his voice. I wanted to believe him, but I'd seen the look in Dad's eyes: disgust, betrayal, shame. The town found out faster than we expected. By the next day, whispers followed us everywhere: the diner, the gas station, the hardware store where I worked. Claire had told her sister, who'd told someone else, and soon, the story was twisted into something ugly. We weren't just brothers in love. We were a scandal, a sin, a betrayal of everything our town held dear. Ethan moved into my apartment, his marriage to Claire officially over. She filed for annulment, and though she didn't speak to us, she sent a letter through her lawyer. "I don't hate you," it read. "I just wish you'd told me sooner." I carried that letter in my sketchbook, a reminder of the pain we'd caused. We tried to keep our heads down, but the town wouldn't let us. Notes were left on my car: crude words, Bible verses. Ethan's boss at the auto shop cut his hours, citing customer complaints. We were pariahs, and every day felt like a battle. But in the quiet moments, when it was just us, it was worth it. We'd lie on my couch, his head on my chest, talking about a future we could barely imagine. "We could leave," he said one night, his voice soft. "Go somewhere new. Start over." I nodded, but the thought of leaving our home, our family, was a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. Weeks turned into months, and the town's anger didn't fade. We were shunned at church, ignored at the grocery store. Mom called sometimes, her voice strained, but Dad was a ghost. Ethan took it harder than I did. He'd always been the one to make them proud. Now, he was the one breaking their hearts. But we found moments of light. Late nights sketching while Ethan watched, his chin on my shoulder. Drives to the coast, where we could hold hands without fear. Kisses that tasted like freedom, even if it was fleeting. We were building something new, something ours, but it came at a cost. One night, a brick came through my apartment window, wrapped in a note: "Leave or else." Ethan pulled me into his arms, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "We're not running," he said. "This is our home too." But I saw the doubt in him, the same doubt I felt. How long could we fight? The next day, Mom showed up at my apartment, her face pale but determined. "I've been reading," she said, holding up a book about queer families. I don't understand everything, but I'm trying. You're my boys, and I love you. It wasn't acceptance. Not fully, but it was a start. I hugged her, tears streaming down my face, and Ethan joined us, his shoulders shaking. Dad was harder. He didn't speak to us for months, but one evening, he showed up at the apartment, his hat in his hands. I don't get it, he said, his voice gruff. I don't know if I ever will. But you're my sons, and I can't lose you. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was enough for now. We started planning to leave, not because we were running, but because we wanted a life where we could breathe. We found a small town in Oregon, far from Georgia, where people didn't know our story. Ethan got a job offer at a garage, and I started selling my sketches online, building a small following. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. The night before we left, we went back to the treehouse one last time. We sat there, our hands entwined, the stars bright above us. We made it, Ethan said, his voice soft. Through all of it, I leaned against him, my heart full. We'd lost so much friends, family, the life we'd known, but we'd gained each other. Oregon was different, cooler, greener, quieter. Our new apartment was small, but it was ours, filled with my sketches and Ethan's tools. A life we were building together. The town didn't know us as brothers, just as Ethan and Lucas, two guys in love. It wasn't always easy. There were still whispers, curious glances, but it was easier than Georgia. We visited Mom and Dad twice a year, and each time, they softened a little more. Mom sent us care packages, homemade cookies, new books about love and acceptance. Dad started calling, asking about our lives, even if he didn't always know what to say. Claire moved on, finding love with someone new, and sent us a card wishing us well. It hurt, but it healed too. One evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset, Ethan took my hand. I thought I'd lose you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I thought I'd marry Claire and bury this forever. But you're the one. Luke. You always were. I kissed him, slow and sure, the world fading away. We weren't just brothers anymore, not just lovers. We were partners, survivors, two people who'd fought for a love that defied every rule. It wasn't the life we'd planned, but it was the one we chose. My sketchbook was full now, not just of Ethan, but of us moments stolen and moments won. I'd started a new drawing, one of us standing together under an Oregon sky, our hands linked, our future unwritten. It was a reminder of what we'd overcome, and what we'd gained, a love that was worth every fight, every tear, every whispered confession. As the stars came out, Ethan pulled me close, his breath warm against my neck. We're home, he said, and for the first time, I believed it. Home wasn't a place, not Georgia, not Oregon. It was him. It was us. And no matter what the world threw our way, we'd face it together, unapologetically, forever.